which you probably got a really good idea about that.
Yeah, I mean, you do pick up good stuff. As I say, it's not a bad thing with what I do on the day job, but it does. You have to make sure that you force yourself to do other things, to keep the creativity going, to keep challenging yourself. You know, I can walk into an interview setup and know, you know, pretty much whatever room it's in, how to do a basic, you know, bosh, that's it, you know, because that's what the majority of, especially in the corporate world, they need. They want it nice and clean and safe, and it's all about the message. Whereas, you know, it's good to have something where you walk into a room, you've really got to think, how am I going to do this? How am I going to shoot it? How am I going to light it? You know, to really push and challenge yourself, so that, you know, not only does that keep the enthusiasm up and keep the brain going and keep the creative juices going, it also then you can take that back into your other work and can add an extra level to the day job stuff. You know, I can then, having tried different things, having had that opportunity to, because you can't really experiment when you're on a short time and you've got to do it, so it gives you that opportunity to try stuff, to experiment, and then you can take some of that back into the day job and you know, add that extra level of value to the work you're delivering to the clients, which is good. And it's like, at the minute, you know, the industry as it is, ultimately, I'd love to be shooting the next Batman or Superman or whatever, or working with Roger Deakins, you know, that's like brilliant. But that's like getting signed as a band, you know, there's still, you've got to pay the bills, you've got to do stuff. I admire people who just go out and be like, no, I'm just going to make films and stuff. If you can do that, brilliant. You know, if you can just get off your own back and do films and stuff, that's not the position I'm in. You know, so it's like, I've got to keep the day job going.
You've got to pay the rent, basically.
Yeah, I've got to pay the rent and then build up the show reel to hopefully then lead on to bigger and better things as I go on. And to be fair, you know, as I said, I started in the industry in 2005. I went freelance as a camera op in 2009. It's 2013 now. I'm still early days career. Yeah. You know, whilst the age might be progressing on nicely, it's still early days career-wise. So I've got time. You know.
If you're doing, what will you be doing in 5 years? I mean, what would you be happy doing in 5 years? Would you be happy doing exactly the same thing?
Not exactly the same. I would hope that in 5 years I have progressed and you know, not necessarily stopped doing what I'm doing now, but certainly added more to the roster, and you know, and got back into working in productions that are bigger in scale and have a bit more of a creative edge to it. You know, there's some cracking stuff being shot in both corporate and broadcast, as well as film and everything, and it'd be nice to kind of push that. Music videos is something that's an opportunity to do that. Whilst there's bugger all money in it at the level I'm at the moment, it is a case of that, you know, if I get a few under my belt and then, you know, I've been doing it for housemates and friends and so forth, and then start branching out and getting more, you know, in 5 years, hopefully there'll be some paperwork in there for me. But I mean, it's not luck of the draw, you know, you make your own luck, but there's so many people doing it, there's so many different avenues, and it's a very diluted industry as that respect goes now. I think it's very, whereas it was hard to get into the industry back in the day because it was quite a closed shop, very, you know, a lot of nepotism and this, that and the other. Now it's so diluted that it's equally as hard to find the right people, the right contacts to do what you want. And you know, I'd love to be shooting features. I think most camera people.
What's stopping you?
Probably just money, to be fair. You know, it's money and contacts. I could, you know, work the contacts and so forth, but I've got to pay the bills.
So it's not the want of an Arri Alexa then?
No, I'd love an Arri Alexa, yeah. I have shot Arri Alexa, it's a beautiful camera. It's a money thing. I've got, you know, there's financial commitments that I have to meet, and it's like to give up that time.
I get it. I just thought
yeah, no, yeah, totally. But it's to give up that time and and go and do it. I wish I could, you know. There's various ideas and stuff, but or just to go with somebody who's got a really good idea and say, yeah, I'll shoot that feature.
Do you think also that it has to be done in a certain way? For instance, you could shoot. There's an argument that you could just get an iPhone and make a feature in an afternoon with some of your friends, and it doesn't necessarily be bad if you have some kind of idea.
No, not at all. It depends what you want to get out of it. You know, you can shoot stuff on iPhones. You know, they shoot 1080p nowadays. Park Chan Wook, director of Old Boy, he did a whole short film, I think, on iPhones.
Okay, is it good?
I haven't seen it. I keep trying to find it, and I've literally just remembered about it, to be honest.
Yeah.
But you know, it was part of I don't know if it was a publicity thing, but you know, he shot film on iPhones. I think they might have had lens adapters and stuff on the front. But yeah, you can quite happily go out and shoot with an iPhone, especially with some of the apps they've got now, like Filmic Pro and things, where you can lock your exposures and lock your focus. Yeah. It opens up this big world of stuff. But it depends what you want to get out of it. You know, it's like I'd do a short on an iPhone just as an experiment, you know, to see, you know, how you could do it. It's a little bit of a challenge. It's the same as a music video I'm working on with Jim at the moment. We're doing it all on GoPro.
And it's kind of low risk, low cost.
Yeah, it is low risk, low cost, but it's challenging the creativity. You know, you've got the constraint of the shooting format, but you have that safety that
sometimes that's a good thing. Like that.
Yeah.
We were talking about it. Sometimes you just got no zoom, or nothing.
Yeah.
You just got a go start button.
Exactly.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
And also not having to lug loads of stuff around somehow frees you up and keeps you in a better mood as well.
But
you might think, oh, yeah, we could go up the top of the hill to do that, but to be honest, it's too hot. And it's not gonna
yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There is stuff a bit like that.
But it's all it's a project to project thing. You know, it depends what you want to get out of the project, what the project needs. You know, it's like
that's kind of what I think. What I was asking is because you're on a bit of a progression.
Yeah.
And you've got stuff under your belt. I don't know exactly what direction.
Just trying to
You might want things to be done. You might not be interested in, like earlier on we talked about when you first started working with people. It was frustrating when you were working with people who didn't really know what they're doing. You might only really be interested in working in, once you get to a certain stage, and working with projects that are at a certain level, both in terms of like crew and equipment and the kind of final look.
It's a totally valid point. But you know, where I'm at now, it's like I know more people in the industry. I work with professionals now rather than with amateurs, which we all were back when I started. So that isn't so much a big issue. I've got people it's like if I need somebody who's got more lighting experience than I, or that's got a different look on things, or I know many more people now that I can within that network that I can call upon to create a project. You know, for me, it's what do I want to get out of that project, and say with the GoPro video, it's because that's an interesting challenge. Do the whole thing on the GoPro, but rather than just do it, you know, with the usual kind of this head mount, chest mount. It's like, how can we use that camera to do something interesting? You know, it's like such a small form factor, but you're limited because it's a fixed focus, and you know, you're limited to a degree with the viewing angle and stuff. But you know, what can we do? How can we use it? It's like it's a challenge on that side of things, and it then helps to bolster the showreel. The one I did before that for Jim was more about, you know, and was more for me more about lighting and trying to really push stuff and do stuff that I hadn't really done before, but I wanted to try. So going into say if it was a feature film project with whoever, it would be, you know, looking at, you know, why am I doing this? And if they're like, oh, we're going to shoot the whole thing on iPhones, fair enough. If there's something else that I feel is worth, you know, I'll get out of it. And it's like, okay, if we're shooting everything, we're shooting everything on iPhones, then it would become, you know, that pushes you in terms of composition and lighting and so forth. So there's challenges in there.
So Mike hasn't asked you to work on any of his things, then?
No.
You know, over the last few years he's been making.
Yeah, no, Mike hates me.
Yeah, well, I've always thought you'd want money because, like, you're a professional, and I'm still just like making shit.
I make plenty of shit. No, it's not about that. It's about, as I say, you know, it's like I've been working with my friend Simon Drake on some stuff, and I've been gaffering for him. You know, obviously he doesn't pay me for that. I don't expect payment for that. But it's doing something slightly different. It's working with Dan Rickard, who's DPing it. The way he goes into doing a shot, the way he lights, is very different from how I would approach something. So I can learn from that.
Yeah.
Even though essentially, you know, he's not a professional DOP. It's still, you know, having worked with him and seen stuff, it's like I know what I can get out of that, and it's working with people I like working with and who I trust that are not going to, you know, dick me about, basically. So, you know, yeah, I'd happily work with him.
You've got some things in common with Mike.
It's just how you've got to be. You've got to be.
Mike's so used to getting. The first thing I done with him about 3 years ago, he was so convinced that no one's going to turn up because he's so used to people letting him down. We were waiting for this actress to turn up, and like 2 hours before, he's like, "Oh, she's not turning up. We're going to have to work out something else to do." He's already making plans. I was like, "She's coming. It's no problem." And she turned up, but he's so used to.
But you do get that though. You do get that. I mean, I've been on other films where it's like we've literally had to replace the lead actress a few minutes before we start rolling because they've just not turned up. And that's the problem with the indie film industry, and that really.
I think you've both been jaded in that respect.
Probably right.
Yeah,
it's still positive. I feel like anything's possible.
It is, but you've got to be careful. You've got to pick who you work, and that was kind of one of the big things I learned from Mike. That it's like there are some people who get it and others don't. And when you're doing, you know, a short film and you're not paying people, what you need is people who get it and are into it. You know, rather than people who are just doing something to build a CV or doing a show reel, because that's when they let you down. That's when they're not giving all. If they don't get it, if they're not like, oh yeah, this is really good, you know, I can really into the project, it's not going to work.
But I've probably been quite good in the past in convincing people that it's an amazing thing, and actually it probably hasn't turned out to be that amazing. So part of the job of someone, you know, if someone's good at selling something to you, I suppose you just won't work with them again, really. But
well, yeah, this is it. You pick and choose. I'm not. Although I've worked in production, you know, I've been a producer, director, and stuff. It's not where my passion is. So it's hard for me. You know, I don't want to be producing stuff, and that's why a lot of my projects that, you know, I've had various scripts and various ideas that I just haven't got off the ground because I just look at the amount of work involved in organising it. I think, fucking hell, you know, I can't. That's a lot of hassle. And then look back at my one where I got somebody in as a producer, and they were shit. And it's like, well, how do I know?
Just as much,
I need to know that person that I bring in is going to be into it and not
see. This is what happened to Mike. It's weird now you talking like this, but this is what happened to Mike. I know Mike from art college about.
A while ago.
A long time ago.
A long time ago. Well, was it when we were like 18 or something, 19? And then hooked up with him again later on through someone else a couple of years ago. And part of the reason we're doing this is to work out. I've always been really impressed that Mike's he's just done it himself, basically because of what you just said. Basically because he got to a stage where he was living somewhere where he couldn't really rely on anyone else, so he ended up doing the whole thing himself, and he just developed a system of just making features in a week or 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And yeah, he just got a good little system going. So I just was quite, you know, I've always thought it's quite amazing what he's been up to. But yeah, we're doing this now. We're doing this now because, you know, he's not really sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm at midlife crisis phase now. You know,
I'm well into that, mate.
Now it's about turning the camera back. We thought, well, let's do another one, but let's just work out what it's all about. And obviously, you've got people who want to make it, and people who are sort of in various stages of production or doing what are like you, you know, making a living. Some people, like there's people that are. We've been talking to actors and directors and people who aren't really actors and directors. They're actually working at, you know, McDonald's or whatever, but they're mad for it. But they are young and keen, so there is an age thing, I think, as well. But it's amazing how much time people are willing. You know, people are passionate. People who want to make it, and there's also people who seem to be these kind of figures that just rise up, and then people follow them like the Pied Piper.
Yeah.
They're so enthusiastic, people start believing them, and what starts out to be we'll pay your travel ends up everyone's paying their own travel just because they're so into it.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no money to keep it going, but everyone keeps turning up still to get it. You know,
because they believe in the project, they believe in the people behind it. Absolutely.
So we were just trying to work out whether it's all like a bit of a, you know, in terms of making your own features, like with bits of sellotape and a fiver and some cheese sandwiches and whatever you can get hold of and some friends who turn up, whether it is a complete waste of time because inevitably
it doesn't pay the bills.
It's never going to happen. You know, you're kidding yourself if you think by some chance you could make something which could blow up to be incredible, or you could sell on, or whether.
I think you have to be realistic.
Not, you know, because there's always that thing. The thing that appeals to me, I think, I'm not really a filmmaker. I've got a background in filmmaking, but I've just got this. I just really love this stuff about. I think what these kids are doing, like making features just with a bunch of people, is more exciting than the actual. They're all talking about they're doing it to get a portfolio, to get jobs in film. I think what they're doing now is more exciting.
Well, they were saying, you know, about they're making feature films in the hope that they could be a runner on a Hollywood sort of thing, you know. So it's like.
Whereas I'm looking at thinking, but
they're already doing
brilliant.
it.
Just like it's punk, it's brilliant. You're actually just getting it together, and you're getting better at it. And you're sort of developing your own.
There is a lot of similarities between the film industry and the music industry in that respect. There's plenty of people in bands. You know, I live with two of them who are trying to make it and trying to get somewhere. But they're still not getting radio and airplay. You've still got to have the right contacts and the right money to hit the big leagues. You know, and unless you're very, very lucky, every now and again something crops up. You know, the classic example is Blair Witch. More recently, you've got Monsters. Is it Gareth Edwards? I can't remember the director's name now, but Monsters, which was the independent thing that he shot that got picked up at a festival.
But was that actually the way it is, or is that just designed to make people think? Is that part of the selling point?
I think there was definitely an element of that, but he got the contacts, and whether it was luck or he worked for it, and a combination of the two, it can happen. But in much the same way as being in a band and getting signed can happen. That's how I look at it.
We were talking about this in the car about, I set a record label up when I was living in Brighton, pressed a record and everything, which was an achievement. But then we were like, what do we do now? But then a few years later, when I got a job at a record label, I was just surrounded by people who were all making loads of money out of just sort of hanging around and then going off on tour. And it's because if you're inside, but there's this frosty layer on the outside. Like you were saying with the film,
you've still got to crack that, and it's still that way. Film, TV, it's all the same. It's hard to get that initial foot in.
When you're on the outside, it just seems like, how do I do it? When you're on the inside, it's like it's just regular. It's not even a challenge.
I mean, if you've got a bit of nous about you, you can make a feature, and you can get it distributed. There's plenty of things.
Well, this is what we were saying. Because a lot of people we spoke to are independent. Actually, we should get this without the plane. Let's have a mini break in a second. Because
if you cut